Welcome to the City of River Falls Municipal Utility Advisory Board meeting for Monday, May 16th, 2022. Lene, could we please have a roll call?
Carroll,
Here.
Garrell, Lick,
Here.
Spafford, Toom,
Here.
Wells Mangold.
Here. The lengthy one. Looking for an approval of the minutes from the UAB meeting on April 18th. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, minutes are approved. This is a time for public comment. Do we have any? None? All right. All right, so moving on to the consent agenda. Can we have an acknowledgement of the meeting from the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission from April 21st, 2022?
I will make a motion to accept the minutes from the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission for 21-22.
Second.
Any discussion on those? It's consent. Anything need to be pulled? No? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. All right, Kevin, moving on to some new business. Resolution regarding the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids contract recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Kellen. In your packet, I put a fairly lengthy memo, probably too long, but I thought this much gravity to this subject needed a little bit more attention. So I will give you quite a bit of background about River Falls and River Falls Municipal Wastewater Utilities' relationship with West Central Wisconsin Biosolids, and where we've been with them, where we're at, and where we are potentially going with West Central Wisconsin Biosolids. Over the last 3 years, since West Central asked us for a contract extension to 2040, we paused and said, before we commit to adding 15 years to our existing contract, maybe we should just look one more time at if we were to dry our solids ourselves, if that'd be beneficial to our utility and the city. So we had an initial look at it and went, oh, geez, that does look pretty good. And we didn't trust ourselves. And we did that about 3 more times up until most recently when, I think it was late January, or was early February, we had a joint utility advisory board and city council workshop when we had our engineers that are proposing our new site there. We had Trilogy Consulting, who's working the numbers, were there. And the more we look at this, it is going to save the utility money with all of our assumptions over long periods of time if we do it ourselves. In this last round, when I'm putting my pencil to the paper and my fingers to the keyboard, I'm getting nervous, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, we're making a legacy decision. I want to dot every I and cross every T. So I go back to the Trilogy. I go back to our consultant, Strand Engineering, and I'm like, add some more money. I want to make this look as realistic as possible. I do not want any surprises. We can't have any surprises. So they've upped the estimate to about $8 million now from $7.2 million. That's if we include the bagger that we saw down in the Wisconsin Dells and some inflation costs and whatnot. But even with the $8 million and some other maneuvering of the figures to try to make it closer, it's still more financially viable for us to do it ourselves. When I talked to Dean Seamuth, our water wastewater superintendent, and his staff, they're excited about the opportunity to be able to dry our own sludge. There's no hiccups there. I talked to Josh Solinger, our finance director, and said, Josh, let's make sure we can afford this thing. So in the memo, you see he played it out till, I don't know, what was it, 2035 on their debts. And the debt would be very similar in 2035 as it is today, and we're able to function today. So, all signs indicate that we should probably not renew our contract with West Central and go it alone. That's even coming out of my mouth right now. That feels like a big decision, but it's something that, again, for 3 years, been looking at, and I do believe that this time is the right thing to do. And I'm asking for this board to take all the information you've had over the years and the information I put in front of you today and advance this and recommend that our city council then approve a resolution that says that we would not renew our contract with West Central Wisconsin Biosolids. That's where I'm at today. Any questions?
And Kevin, for our newest board member, and forgive me, Chris, for not
Chris.
acknowledging that
Yeah.
at the beginning. I think I did that last time too. So for just everyone and acknowledging that this is a really big decision, our partners that are already in the co-op,
Mhm.
what are the repercussions for them? And then also, what are any repercussions for River Falls if we decide to leave in our relationships with those partners?
Okay, so that's a good question, and that's something I thought about about a year and a half ago. So that's the first thing that makes me nervous, right? Is, oh my gosh, our friends and neighbors in Hudson and New Richmond especially, they're the next two biggest owners of West Central Biosolids. What are they going to think? Well, Scott Morissette came with me last November, I believe it was, to the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids membership meeting. And I think I just said, the elephant in the room is there's a rumor that River Falls might be leaving the consortium. And yeah, they said, yeah, we've heard of this. And then I gave a little speech about this is a business decision. This is nothing personal. We're basing our decision based on what's best for our community, though we do have our friends and partners in mind when we're making this decision, which to me makes it a little bit more difficult decision. I've heard Kellen say, I think this is more of a on paper decision. And if that's on paper, it's real easy, but I wanted to think there might be some politics involved. The mayor doesn't agree with that either. He said there's no politics involved. This is strictly business. But I wanted to be sensitive to our neighbors in Hudson and Richmond. They do know what's going on. They do understand it. And the implication is that we are about 20% owners of that facility, and they would take on that additional burden. I'm hoping what they can do, and I'm sure they'll talk about this Wednesday night at the next membership meeting, is they may have to do a project that's more scalable to what's remaining. I mean, that seems to me to make sense, right? They would scale that project to something more in line with the remaining members. Though when that was brought up last time, the answer was, no, we're still going to build what we're going to build. But there might be a push from both Hudson and Richmond to try to scale that so they don't get the full brunt of building something that would be also big enough for River Falls. So we'll wait and see what happens Wednesday night. But I'll probably inform them that Wednesday night that we have made a decision at the Utility Advisory Board level to move it to council to not renew. And that could change some of their future planning, I would guess. So I don't know what they need to do things, right? They need to, I think we're going to recommend they go ahead and they build their $7 million upfront piece here for the loading station and some storage, which we'll have to pay for the first 2.5 years until we get out. So, and the implications of that I think are in the, if it was in the memo or not. Oh yeah, $224,000 that we'd be paying over the few years. And that will be passed along through rates. So we figured out, I think estimated high, we said if River Falls has to pay for 3.5 years, how much will we be paying of that project that's going to be funded probably till 2040, and it'll be about $224,000. So, but I think, and that's part of being the good neighbor thing. I don't think we should say no, we don't want to support the project. And to be honest with you, if we don't support that project, the project probably doesn't happen because it's weighted voting. So it would take us and one other member to kill a project. But in talking to Mr. Simpson, he feels like this isn't the hill to die on that, and that it'd be a good peace offering going out. We've applied for the $1.6 million grant River Falls did that we're going to give to West Central to help defray some of these costs. And then we'll be in it for $224,000 up until the end of 25. So there is sensitivity to the neighbors, but I think we've handled it correctly. They might like the answer, but this isn't going to be a secret or a surprise. They've had time to think about it, and they know we're making a business decision. I think they were in somewhat of regret that they didn't do what we did. So there, hopefully that answered that. So yes, there's sensitivity to it, and there has been communication around that.
I'll just kind of make a statement and maybe throw some questions in there. So I'm new, and I don't ever like to talk when I'm new, but I also know I'm the council representative, so I'm expected to know what's going on a little bit. So obviously we have the joint workshop, and we, you articulated here and there, this is a 36-month decision-making process. It's not an overnight thing at all. And when you've looked at the numbers, and I know council in the joint workshop, we've looked at them and been over them a couple different times. We're supposed to be in the business of, data-driven decision-making. And from a data standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And I also think on the relationship side, River Falls has done everything it can to honor its commitments and be a good partner and be a good neighbor. So because of that, I feel excited about this. I think it's a good decision going forward. And to the extent that anyone gets excited about, sludge, right? This is a good thing. I also think too, there'll be an education piece for our citizens. You're great at doing videos, and your team is, Kevin. Show them what's going on, and they'll understand it. Because I think for people who aren't in the audience or aren't reading the newspaper, this is going to just be opaque because they don't think about it very often. Because as we've talked about with wastewater and everything that's done, people do not think about it because it's going well. So that being said, I think on the back end, we'll have to just kind of remind the public this is why we're doing it, and this is a great decision. And here's some of the reasons why. But no, I think your team's done a really great job. I think the whole city has been really fair in its conversations and then ultimately in its commitments to our partners. So I think this is a great thing and excited to support it.
Thank you. Yeah, the first thing I think when we start informing them, they're going to be saying, "You've been hauling that stuff to Ellsworth for that many years? I had no idea. That's not really that smart."
Kevin, I know you've had our consultants look at the cost estimates again, and more than one time. Certainly, things are changing nationally and globally with costs and timing of materials and that sort of thing. And now the one thing, if our costs go up in River Falls, the Ellsworth project's costs probably go up too. So, we really don't want either one of them to overspend, but, things do happen. I'm curious about, is there any concern if we cancel this thing, the contract obviously would have to make this commitment, and then what happens if we can't get this main piece of equipment, this dryer, paddle dryer, in the time that we're thinking we need to? I mean, how big of a bind do we get put into, and are there any other, I'm sure there's always alternative plans but they're not necessarily always good. So just curious if there's been any discussion about that, and if there's any undue risk here that we should be thinking about.
There's been some real high-level discussions about that, and so right now we really don't have redundancy. If Ellsworth can't haul, we're kind of stuck with the product. Everybody else is stuck with the product. If you get to a scenario where we're drying, we have a dryer locally, and Ellsworth has their facility, there probably then, we said, there's some redundancy. So I'm hoping, because we're leaving in good terms, that maybe we can have an agreement moving forward that if we go down, we can haul, or if they go down, we could cause some relief here by allowing people to bring their sludge here. So that's what I'm going to be working for on the exit, is some type of long-term commitment to each other that we'd be in a backup role in a pinch. So that's what I would go for on that. So I mean, that's what I would like to see.
And agreed. I would just be a little concerned if we couldn't get our facility up and running in time for the stated time frame. But as long as we can think that we have at least some handshake agreement, and I mean, we may end up having to pay a premium price if we can't do that. And I guess I'm just curious if there's any. I mean, I don't know how many pieces of equipment like this are built every year. I'm sure we're not the only one that's buying this type of equipment, but I don't know what the availability is for these dryers.
I would just say this too, Tim, is I think if it was a year and a half, I might be a little more nervous, but since it's 3.5 years, I
Okay.
feel slightly more confident.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
And
You're
then,
asking all the right questions.
Kevin, really quick, just
Yeah.
a really quick recap. Thinking of like our last meeting, and we saw all of the projects that are going to be going on, and some of them are really expensive, including this one. How is this one going to be sort of funded again?
Yeah, this will be through bonding, and that's why I had Josh Solinger in the memo put the debts from 23 up until 35. Here, the good news is that we have a debt retiring in 23 and another debt retiring in 26. That's really going to help us. Without that, we probably couldn't afford this project. So we have a lot of big debt coming off the books in the next 3.5 years that are going to be able to allow us to do this project. But we put all big projects in the numbers. The only wild card is Man Valley. We're a little uncertain about some of the extensions in Man Valley, but when Josh and I talked about this, when we talk Man Valley, there's a pretty big expense side to that. But the side we leave out, and it's probably realistic, is the revenue side. We're not going to be investing $1 million in Man Valley without a potential customer that's also going to generate revenue. I just don't see that happening. So there could be more expenses that we haven't thought about related to Man Valley and getting the sewer and water out there. But if we're doing that, I believe it's going to be a customer that's going to return that in revenue. So other than that, everything else is in these numbers that we could think of as far as long-term projects. And again, erring on the side of bigger numbers rather than smaller numbers. I'm not trying to make this look good. I'm trying to make it look bad. So we can come on the other side and go, oh, we have extra money here. The rate is don't have to raise rates. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish. But there's the unknowns. And Tim mentioned inflation. I mean, I'm sure. Or maybe we'll get to a sweet spot in a year and a half where we get into a little, stagnation and they're trying to get projects out and we've got one. So maybe that could happen too. Maybe we'll time it. Maybe we'll get lucky and hit one on that side of it once. Maybe. So we don't know.
And then also, I guess, I did take the field trip down to Wisconsin Dells to look at their facilities, which was impressive, the facility. And I think I came back with a better comfort level of just the complication or somewhat lack of. I mean, it really is pretty simple concept, and so I mean, I'm not worried about the process so much, but just now I see they've kind of added some money for the bagging system, and I guess maybe I'm not saying that wouldn't be a nice thing to have, but it could be something that maybe we could have a simpler handling system.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing where. Well, it probably adds some cleanliness to the operation, but maybe bunkers with covering, inside bunkers with tarp covering.
There are other ways to do it.
Could accomplish that. I mean, I wouldn't want to see us be committed to that without
Correct.
at least having some
Correct.
engineering options on that down the road, which I assume we would.
Our finance director and myself had that exact same conversation. So he was saying almost verbatim what you just said. So he's like, hey, maybe we can postpone that or not do that. What's the real story of it is we want to build a Chevy and we went and drove a Cadillac. I mean, and it's a little tough to get back in the Chevy. But to your point, no, nothing is for certain. I priced it in there in case you want to do that, but there is room for efficiencies without building it out quite like they did.
I guess I picked a heck of a night to start.
Yeah. So I'm going to bail you out. So Chris and I did meet, and we did talk about this for a little bit too. So he's not totally green on this. Go ahead.
Yep. So I did want to say, because I did take some time to read through some of the different reports and agendas and minutes and all that stuff. And everybody on the board has put in a lot of work to bring this to fruition. So it made it much easier for me to at least understand what's going on and why it makes sense for our community. So I have to kind of commend all of you for putting in the time to do it. And then I just get to come in at the end. But I believe it makes a lot of sense. And just, I guess, one question I did have with the byproduct coming out of there, what is the plan with it? Could it be sold?
Potentially. We're debating whether it's enough product to sell. It's about a dump truck full a week, and the amount of time and effort it would take to invoice and whatever. I mean, that'll be a debate whether or not it's worth it to sell it. There's a couple things. I've already contacted UW Farm to say, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? We have a lot of parklands and other places we could potentially spread it. But yeah, I mean, selling it isn't off the table. I just don't know if it's enough volume to make it worth our time to sell it. That's going to be the real issue.
Okay.
So not that it doesn't have value. It's like, but do you want to spend $50 to get $54?
Yeah.
And I see Dean out there in the audience.
Yeah.
And as we think about this, and it's really you and your crew that have to run this show, thumbs up or thumbs down? You feel good about it?
You can come on up, Dean. Come on up.
With West Central Biosolids,
Wait. Just go right in the mic. Yeah.
right now, we currently are about 2 days away from being full of sludge because of the road bans. When they get the road bans, they can't haul as much sludge as we produce. So over the past month and a half or whatever the road bans have been on. So we're literally like 2 days. If West Central went down for 2 days, we'd be full. We would be, so we can't regulate that. With the dryer, we can regulate ourselves. So we can, that's one thing that I was looking at over the last couple of days of why this would be so important.
I know what happens in my house when things back up. What happens when we're full here?
I haven't experienced that yet, and I'm not sure really. We do have another tank that we could open up for this sludge if we had to. Our Centrain tank, we could put sludge in there, and it would, in an emergency, it would get us by.
We've never done that, but like in an emergency.
And we do have our old storage tank that are not in use, but they're still empty, and that could be a storage as well. We'd have to move some valves around and it could go in there. But yes, I'm very much a thumbs up on this. So, anything else?
Thanks, Dean.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, so looking for an approval for the resolution recommending approving the action of non-renewal and no extension to our current contract with West Central Wisconsin Biosolids facility. I know we just talked about it. Any further discussion? Last chance.
Do you need a motion on that?
Motion. Thanks, Nick. That's why you're here.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution for recommending canceling our contract with West Central Wisconsin Biosolids facility.
Non-renewing, not canceling, right?
Non-renewal.
Non-renewal.
Non-extension, non-renewal.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it is approved. Okay, moving on to reports. Kevin?
Yeah, Dean is back up. He's going to talk to us just briefly about our annual consumer confidence report, our CCR report. Every water customer in River Falls will get this report in their utility bill stuffer, and it just reaffirms the safety and quality of our drinking water. So Dean is going to give a brief overview of that.
Yes. I don't like talking in front of people, so bear with me. So what this is, it's an annual report the DNR requires. We have to inform our citizens that our water is safe to drink. It's a very simple form. It's what you see in front of you. This one, Lene makes very nice. The one we have that goes to the DNR is pretty much just black and white. Nothing changes as far as health information is pretty much the same. The well depths, they don't change. They're all the same. But when you get to the results back here, the top, page 3, the top one is an annual test we do that covers the byproducts of chlorination to our water. It's done, like this year, I believe it's the third quarter, next year will be the fourth quarter, first quarter, second quarter, so it's rotating around. This is the results from 2021 of our HAA5, which is a haloacidic acid. It's a byproduct of chlorination. And the total trihalomethananes, which is the TTHM, is a group of possibly dangerous chemicals from the byproduct that we test for. And you can see all of our numbers are safe and very low. The next 3 are actually naturally occurring contaminants that are in Mother Earth. We are very low on all those as well. The second group, the inorganic contaminants, we do that every quarter through our raw water at our wells before it gets treated. The radioactive contaminants, there is radium and uranium are naturally found in the earth. The other 2, the gross alpha, are tests we do for different radiation, and if that's high, then we have to do the next test, but ours has never been high. The bottom one is another group of natural found contaminants in the earth, and that one's done every quarter as well with our raw water. And on page 4, the top one is what we call unregulated contaminants. The DNR picks one every 5 years that we test. So 5 years ago, we tested for the sulfate and magnesium in that group. Starting next year, 2023, they'll have a different group that we'll test for, and that'll be 5 years worth of data. Then the bottom one is lead and copper, which we do every 3 years. And that is that.
Dean, do you want to mention the PFAS test that we're going to be required to
That's
do
going to
next year?
be, the PFAS test will be the unregulated contaminant that we do next year. There's, I think, 19 different PFASs we're going to be testing for. So then you'll see those results for the next 5 years. Same results every year. We don't retest. It's just that they require us to post it every year. Anything else?
I asked Dean to come up because I just think it's important for you folks and the public to hear that our drinking water is safe. They will get this in the mail to confirm that. So when people conjecture about our water, you can pull this out, which will also be posted on our website, and you can say our water's safe.
Yeah, and I think we already got it in our mailing. Any other questions? Good, thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Finance report?
Yeah, I have a real brief finance report. Numbers are coming in late. I don't even think they're 100% complete yet, but I will give you a snapshot of where all our utilities are here in April. Lene handed it to you before the meeting, and we'll also email that out in the morning so the folks that weren't here get to see it as well. But I'll just go to the bottom line on it. First on electric, we are a plus $433,517 when you take revenue over expenses, so that's a positive for electric. Water, we're still behind by $39,417 when you take revenues over expenses. And again, that's seasonal, right? So as we get into the hotter months and people start using more water, we usually play catch up in June, July, August for water. But we're close to par on that already, even though we're through the winter and shoulder months. So really, that's pretty typical of where we're at. Sewer, we're plus 270,000, and as you know, we're going to need that money. But we're right on schedule with sewer as well. And then stormwater, we're plus 29,000. Last year we ended up just a little bit negative as we had the Gulfview channel work that we weren't expecting. That kind of hurt the stormwater numbers a little bit, but this year we're over on that as well. So all the utilities are doing well financially, and we'll have a more robust report when Josh Solinger, our finance director, is well, and he'll be with us next month. That's what I have for finances.
Utility dashboards?
I don't have a lot to add to the dashboards. I was going to try to get you a number today from spring cleanup last week. We were always averaging last few years roughly about 1,000 people. Is that right? About to come to spring cleanup. And I was trying to see if we got those numbers. We didn't get those today from advanced disposal or waste management, I guess they're called. So, but I'm assuming I didn't hear anything, any negatives. The only negative I heard is the first night the tornado sirens went off, then the crews went home. And then somebody still went out there and said, hey, where's the crews? But, you know, 2 tornado sirens and you have people standing out there. And once those folks go home, you're not getting them back for the last 45 minutes. So was like the only negative I heard that day. Other than that, I think it went off without a hitch. And people unloaded a lot of stuff. So, but I'll get you the exact numbers. Other than that, I don't have anything to add to the dashboards.
Kevin, question. We had, 2.5-inch rain last week. How did the bounce, I guess, for the dam that we have opened up, or the lake bed? Looked like the lake bed maybe filled up, but I curious, was it going over
It did.
the dam?
So water was going over after the 2.5-inch rain event we had in River Falls. The river got high. The next morning, I couldn't even believe how high it was. So I'm assuming north of here, they must have gotten a lot more rain than we got because that water was high and there was a ton of debris in that river. And what happened, Tim, is that there's 6x6 opening and some of the other grate that we had where we removed the turbine and let water flow through the penstock region, even that got clogged up with debris. I mean, large tree stumps, barrels, bushes, and yes, the lake did bounce. It got about 80% full, and water was going over top of the dam. It's by Friday, it was already back to pretty much normal. When was it? That was Monday and Wednesday, I think. The Wednesday night is when we had the big rain. I think wasn't it Wednesday? Yes. So yeah, by Friday, because there was some drone footage I was given this morning from David Babcock, and the lake had already receded by Friday. So, and I did get a report that there was still one large tree stump still in front of the opening and trying to figure out how to get it out of there. Not easy. I mean, the river's flowing and the banks are greasy and it's 15 feet down there. So I don't know how they got it, but that was on their to-do list to try to get that last big log freight out of there. So yes, we did have a little bounce. I did let the DNR know that too. And he said, just manage it the best you can. I mean, there's not a lot we can do.
No, and it's not that I'm a hydrologist, but having some restriction there and some storage capacity upstream of that dam couldn't be the worst thing in the world anyway.
Right. There was a lot of sediment in that river. I mean, it was chocolate milk. So, and it was exactly, I was talking to another fellow who came in today asking me about that. And he was a farmer. And he said it's just the absolute worst time. Some farmers had just planted, just put fertilizer down, just worked up the fields, and the heavy rains came, and half their farm fields in the river. So just really bad timing for farmers who just applied seed and fertilizer in a lot of locations. And then, whoosh, and I see it. There's Farmer Jones's field right going down the river. So again, River Falls gets a bad rap for phosphorus in the river. This is my editorial, but a lot of that's coming from upstream. I mean, that's agriculture runoff from here to north of Baldwin, I would guess, right? Where that is coming into the river. And I don't know how much rain they got up there, but they got more than 2.5 inches, I would certainly guess, by the looks and breadth of the speed of that river.
But I think now that lake bed is vegetated, that had to help at least slow that down a little bit and probably catch some of that sediment.
That's a good point, because I was thinking about the drone footage I was looking at this morning. There was still visible vegetation now that the water had receded. So obviously that must have held some of the groundwork, and the river channel itself didn't look any wider or any different than it did prior. So I'm assuming because of some of that vegetation is grown in there, it's holding some of that sediment back. A lot more sediment just coming down the river than what was released to that bed area. What I know about that, and we have folks that are managing that as best they can. It's tricky. I say be safe, because we don't want to be fishing anybody out of that river, and it's tricky.
I mean, Kevin, just want to acknowledge that you gave us the letter about the grant.
Yeah, so I was going to go for announcements, but that's my perfect timing. So speaking of dams and rivers, so just this afternoon I got a letter from Wisconsin DNR. It's Dear Mr. Westhouse. I'll just read the second paragraph because I think that's the one we're interested in. It said the grant award amount will be based upon the project's estimated engineering and construction costs plus a built-in contingency. In an effort to fund the most projects and due to limited funding, the department shall have sole discretion to grant or deny any potential cost amendment requests. So this was originally marketed as $1 million grant for dam removal. But when I read that, it doesn't say anything about it. It basically says, what is the project cost, including engineer costs? And so we'll see. Now I'm getting my hopes up a little bit. That's how I read it. That's probably going to, for the person who wrote it, it's probably not what they intended, right? When you give somebody a range like, oh, that's between $5 and $10, where the buyer heard 5 and the seller heard 10. So something like that going on here maybe, where they're, but this is great news that the city of River Falls is probably going to get up to $1 million to help remove that lower dam, which we had an estimate of about $165 million to do. So
yeah, kudos to the city for securing that. And also just curious, how's the fundraising going for that as well, for the remainder that we'll have to come up with?
We have invoiced the KCC their $60,000 portion. So waiting on that.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
I just have a couple more announcements.
Okay.
Yeah, so WPPI, our wholesale energy provider, they offer these regional power dinners. They have 6 throughout the state of Wisconsin, and about 4 different, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 5 different communities will come together. And WPPI, we have dinner, free dinner. They have a little spiel about WPPI and wholesale power. If you want to come, Lene will send you an invite. This first one is on, what day is this one? Oh yeah, June 1st. Yeah, June 1st. So Lene will send you a message if you want to come for a free dinner and talk to our associates in public power. You're welcome to do that. So I'd like to have you if you want to come. There's no obligation if you don't want to, but that's open. There's also, for those of you who want to learn more about WPPI, on Thursday, June 9th, from 8:30 in the morning till 12:30 noon. If you want to drive down to Sun Prairie, they have 4-hour orientation on public power. So we'll get you a hotel room the night before if you want to do that, and a little per diem, and you can go down and spend 4 hours and do that if you'd like as well. So we'll send out some invites on that. Again, no obligation, but it's open to you folks if you really would like to do that. So those are my announcements that I have. And other than that, I'm welcoming Chris and Nick, so our new liaison and our new board member. It's Mark Spafford's birthday today, and he said they were going to give him a surprise party, and that's why he couldn't make it. So He had to,
Not much of a surprise.
not much of a surprise. They probably figured we better tell him or we're going to lose him. So,
Happy birthday, Mark.
yeah.
Anybody else have anything? Yeah,
Yeah,
right?
oh, I'm sure he's tuned in.
He's live streaming it on his phone.
Yeah.
Anything
That's all I
else?
have.
Yep. Anybody else? All right, so looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.